NBFC or the banking space that you just now alluded to is exactly what I was saying right at the beginning, the process of creative destruction. Overall space, more or less the value has remained the same, but the constituents have undergone material change in terms of some going up materially and some others going down materially. And that's exactly what I was referring to earlier. As far as automobiles are concerned, there is a tremendous process of change. Fundamentally, a lot of factors have occurred over the last 1.5 years, be it in terms of the insurance bunching, in terms of the regulatory and safety change norms, that BS4 to BS6, as well as ABS, CBS from a safety perspective, the changes which are ushered in. Also, I think there was some amount of expectation of a certain growth in the mind of industry, and there was unfortunate clogging up of the distribution channels by excess pumping in of inventory. A lot of factors have occurred, and therefore fundamentally that industry has gone through a bit of a challenge. We have to figure out whether this is a permanent challenge or whether it is a temporary issue which has occurred, which can occur in the character of and evolution of an industry over a period of time. At this juncture, rather than making a judgment, I'm in a mode of remaining watchful and not pre-deciding as to where things are. We'll like to see how things evolve, and we'll take our bets accordingly. We have some amount of presence in some of those names where we think probably the level of decimation has been overdone in our opinion, but nothing is cast in iron and stone. We have to remain watchful, and we are keeping a close eye. But if you ask my personal opinion, my belief is this is a phase in passing, and probably 1 year down we'll think of things differently.
Right, which brings me to my next question actually, which is, from the point of a value investor, how to approach sectors or spaces which are witnessing cyclical slowdowns versus sectors which are witnessing structural slowdowns. Obviously, cyclical slowdown, they're low-hanging fruit. You know this is not a permanent feature. You know they're going to bounce back out of it. Any sector that you feel currently in the current scheme of things, which is more cyclical in nature rather than structural in terms of the overall, if for a lack of word, call it failure in terms of the market standpoint?
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it is a job of any investor to identify short-term changes versus the long-term changes. And if the market prices are mispriced because over-attention is paid to short-term, which could be different from the long-term, therefore that may spell an opportunity or otherwise. And therefore it is the job of every investor to keep judging the long-term change versus the short-term, and whether the market behavior is governed at a point of time more by short term or the long term. Therefore, these remain important ideas at every point of time. Well, finance space, I think, is one area where I believe there is that cyclical short-term, relatively smaller growth, but the long-term opportunity, long-term growth remains intact. And there has been a series of challenges. There has been a fear which has gripped the minds of a lot of people, a lot of it justified obviously by what has happened in the environment for those businesses. But to that extent, if you remain disciplined and careful observer, then I believe that relatively softer overall growth of the credit over last 1 year or so is symptomatic of all of these changes rather than any long-term change in the character. And therefore, to my mind, that represents a perfect great opportunity. Automobile, my heart is telling me that this is probably a short-term one and not a structural debility or a weakness, but I'm still keeping my reservation, keeping my opinion somewhat reserved and guarded, and I'm watching it more carefully. As I said, my belief is that the slowdown there, or rather not slowdown actually, reduction in the growth or negative growth is probably short term, but I would look for more signs and more signals before making a conclusive judgment on that. As far as the other areas are concerned, for example, consumption, I think it is a perfect case of a short-term slowdown, while long-term opportunity to my mind remains powerfully strong as ever. I believe consumption is, unless it multiplies by 3 and 5 and 8 and 10 times, till then trying to measure whether there is a slowdown will be a very premature thing. So we have to wait for years and decades before we'll conclude whether consumption has any degree of satiation being reached. So I think to my mind, it represents a great and perfect opportunity.